So, right, let me give this guy an intro. On the show, we have talked a great deal about not the Great Reset, but this reset that might have happened a few hundred years ago. We've looked into the mud flood thing. We've talked about John Levy's work. In fact, we've even played some of his videos.
Solar outbursts and all that kind of jazz.
I think we've even talked about the massive fossilised trees and the idea that some things in our landscape that we might consider as our mountains and stuff like that, they might actually be something else.
Melted, fossilised buildings.
Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna go deep with some mud fossil research here, and I'm going to welcome Stellium7 to Rise Above. Mike, Stellium, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yeah, mate. You sound
loud
perfect.
And clear, sir. Loud and clear.
Welcome to Rise Above, bro. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks. Thanks for the invite. Nice to be here.
Thank you very much for joining us. Can you just, if someone has never heard of you, can you just give a little introduction into your work, your YouTube channel, and what kind of research you've been doing that's got you to this platform?
Mud fossils was definitely something that put me on the road to looking into these things, along with several other different threads of information, and that got me looking at the world with different eyes, basically. So it was initially it was Mud Fossil University. It was looking into cosmology, Earth shape, a lot of different rabbit holes, and came across a video by a channel called Wakey Wakey. He's been deleted from YouTube, but he's on ODYSEE and other places. And he had a very interesting video called Geology Revived, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And that was just looking at some of the cornerstones of geology and, whether or not there was actual evidence to support those cornerstones, and things like our geological timelines and what we're told about the age of fossils and whatnot. And it was really well put together presentation. And I started thinking about, well, God, you look into things like moon landings and buildings falling and a whole bunch of other things. And the more you look into things, the more you find out that a whole lot of stuff is just flat out lies, fabrications, illusions, magic tricks. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. And then somewhere along the line, I ran across Roger's channel, which is Mud Fossil University, which you referenced. And at first he sounded like a crazy old coot. He's off camera. You never see his face, and he's tapping on the screen, and he's talking about rocks, and he's basically saying that basically all of the rocks that we see, for the most part, are not geology but biology. And I was like, okay, well, I'll give each idea its day in the sun. And the more I listened to him, the more he started to make sense. And the basic gist of what he was sharing with people is the reason he calls it mud fossils is the idea that, you mentioned resets before, and there's mud floods and these different topics that are being thrown about a lot, in the alternative research communities.
Yeah.
And what he was suggesting was that when flesh of different kinds is buried in mud, that it's an anaerobic environment. So there's no oxygen, and because there's no oxygen, the normal worms and whatnot that would be eating away at the decaying flesh, they can't thrive in that environment. So the meat just sits there, and it sits there. And what happens when you add a bit of salt water and you have a bunch of mud and silt is that the minerals that are in the mud slowly start to work themselves into the flesh, and the oxygen and the water works its way out. So that's actually, when they talk about petrified trees in mainstream geology, that's what they're giving us. They're giving us this idea of paramineralization. That's the word for it. Paramineralization is that exchange of materials. And but they're telling us it takes millions and millions of years to happen. But one of the ways that they're determining that is when they're looking at these layers of strata that we see, when cliffs fall away, you can see these different layers of the different time periods. And depending on where they find the fossils, they determine the age of the fossils. I mean, there's lots of ways to do it. Carbon dating, and if you look on Wikipedia for dating methods for determining the age of things, there's many dating methods, but each and every one of them has their problems and are contested. And when you go back and you look at what people were saying about them, you find out that, oh, maybe it's not exactly the way we thought.
Yeah,
and
am I right? Sorry to interrupt. Am I right in thinking like just one of those methods, carbon dating, right? Carbon dating is something that people talk about in the mainstream a lot. Many people repeat that word, probably have no idea what this process is. But am I right in saying that it has like an accuracy range of potentially thousands of years?
Yeah, as I understand it, that's the case. But as it goes up into tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions, your error margin gets larger and larger and larger. So it's accurate for shorter periods of time, but it's not really a good method for dating the long geological timelines that were given in our school books. And there's a lot of things that have come out that never make it into the mainstream mindset that debunk a lot of these different methods. Like, for example, when you're looking at all the different layers of strata, when Mount St. Helens erupted in Oregon, there was a geologist that was examining the slurry flows from the runoff from that eruption. And what they found is in the space of about 3 hours, there was so much movement of material that it created all of this micro layering that we're told normally takes really great amounts of time to form. So, we've got what could have been, if you were speaking to a geologist and you just pointed and like, how long would it take to form this? They might give you some number that was in the millions of years, but in reality, it happened in hours. So those are the kinds of things. that made me start. Oh, that's interesting. And then I was looking into things like star forts and Tartary and all of this other stuff, and I came across a channel called J Dreamers, ends with a Z. He's got a lot of really great content, and he had a video called Petrified Titans. And in that video, he was looking at the mythology behind Titans, looking at how different cultures around the world have talked about these gigantic beings that have existed. Now, I'm not talking about giants. We've got the whole thing about giants being hidden as well, and the Smithsonian squirreling away all the the skeletons and whatnot. And
that's
then
something we talked about a lot.
You look into their sizes, it's like you've got the 10-footers and the 12 and the 15, and then maybe they went up to 50 to 100 feet. There's lots of different theories about how big giants got. But when we're talking about titans, we're really talking about beings that are the size of mountains. And so I was immediately brought back to the movie in the 80s, Clash of the Titans, which I loved as a kid. And they did a remake of that with much better CGI. NASA could learn a thing or two from them. And it was just like, wow, looking into cosmology, and you start to find out that all the ancient cultures had very similar perceptions and ideas about how our realm is built, and they talk about the cosmic egg, and so they also have these great flood myths everywhere you go, and
sure,
there's just a lot of continuity in mythology, and I was always very interested in mythology. I studied Joseph Campbell when I was younger. This whole idea of cross-cultural, comparative mythology was fascinating. I read many books on that, and this was long before I came across the concept of syncretism, which is where you're looking at all of the overlaps between things, because the more things overlap, the more likely there is to be a grain of truth there rather than just flat out lies. And so the J Dreamers video was like, a light bulb was going off there. But also another thing that Mud Fossil University is constantly covering in his videos is there's this place in North Africa where he claims that there's this 900-mile long dragon, and that dragon is in the process of consuming an even larger fish. And it sounds totally batshit crazy, but Plato wrote about this great battle between the behemoth and the Leviathan. And so he was on Google Earth, and he was looking, and he was zooming in on this thing, and he's showing, like, here's the head, and you can see the plumes, and here's the spine, and here's the gullet, and here's the space, and here's where these different things inject in to create, what was probably the venom or the fire of this creature. And then he starts showing you the fish, and the more you look at it, the more you're like, okay, it's far-fetched, but it's kind of interesting. And I was immediately thinking, this is pareidolia, and pareidolia is when you recognize patterns that aren't really there. You see something in a cloud, and it doesn't mean there's something actually in the cloud. And so I was skeptical, but I was going to give the idea it'd stay in the sun. And then watching this video with Daydreamers, the penny dropped for me, because here in Spain, where I live, in the town that I live in, there's a mountain called Montgo, and Montgo is it's known affectionately as the elephant here in this region, because when you look at it, especially from one side in particular, but really from multiple angles, it looks just like an elephant. And it's even got a cave in the exact place where the eye would be, and the head is anatomically correctly shaped.
Is it this picture we've got on the screen right now?
Yeah.
I thought so. Right. Obviously, the tusks have been superimposed. Yeah.
Yeah, it is Photoshop, but it had to be. So but if you go just to give a little visual on you
can share your screen, by the way, Stellium, if you want to. Yeah, there's a little button at the bottom in the middle saying share screen.
I'll just give a little opener. Let me just find the video.
I've got it here on the other computer.
Yeah, so we'll do the short one. I've got a 30-second intro.
Okay.
And let me just disable share screen. There we go.
Okay, so your screen should pop up on my little bar here.
All right. Did you hear that?
I heard it, but have you clicked the share screen button?
Okay, you did. Good. All right. Not yet. I just wanted to make sure I had the right screen.
Okay, we
sharing,
heard it.
And that is there.
You got multiple screens as well?
You should see it now.
I certainly do.
All
there
right.
It is. Okay, let's go.
There we go. Okay. So let's go for it. This is just a little quick visual introduction. It's coming through my Bluetooth speaker. 1 second.
Yeah, turn your speakers off. This is the problem when we have so many different devices all working in sync or attempting to work in sync together. It's pretty spectacular what we can actually pull together.
Can you still hear the audio on it?
No.
All right, here we go.
I think the audio was only coming from your speakers.
Gotcha. Okay, so let me unplug. How's
We can hear you fine.
Good. Here we go.
Okay. It does look like the shape of a decomposing elephant. Wow.
That is just a real short intro to but you can.
When you really zoomed
here.
out on that, it's like you could even see the ribs underneath that was sort of, that clearly had some, or it looks like there's some sort of fossilized skin stretched over, but it's like you can see the rib.
Yeah, exactly. I'll show you on Google Earth. It's easier. Yeah. So this has been edited since I made those original videos. First 3 videos I did, the first one was just an introduction to the concept, which was pretty far-fetched. So I wanted to let people know, hey, I'm not just off on a LARP here. There are reasons. And then after I made the video about the magically started to get out. So now you have to zoom in, and you can't really get the big picture to see everything. Still with me?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, see, I mean, John Levi, he talks about this a lot, about edited
Oh, there we go.
Google Earth, and they like smudge stuff out and make it so you can't see it in its
and
entirety.
he also says he sees certain things, and he will put like a pin in it, come back, and it's gone, or it's been smudged out. Okay, so we've got the definition was coming back there.
Yeah, this happened right after that. I found out in a live interview that this had been edited. But the point is that what you were saying is absolutely true, that there's you can see the remnants of a rib cage, especially from you really get a sense of the ribs. You can see. Let me know if I'm fast, because it takes a little while to kick in here.
No, that's fine.
Turn off labels. There we go. So right here is the head, and this is a cutout where the head would meet the shoulder for the neck, and there's one on the other side as well. And then right here is the eye. This isn't a clear view of what the eye looks like.
Oh yeah, we've got major stuttering on you. I wonder. Oh yeah, it's going red.
I didn't it anyway.
I'm just going to put you into the green room for a second. Stellium, this always happens when someone's giving some really good information. It just said that your signal has gone. Let me just invite you back in. Let me see if that sounds a bit better.
I hear you just fine.
Yeah, people were complaining that it was making you stutter a little bit. I think it was a poor connection, but it seems to be a bit better now.
Okay, I'll go
So
a
yeah,
little
the
slower. It
eye
might
is.
be, yeah. So the eye. So basically, what happened is when the pin dropped for me, and I started looking to this mountain a little bit more, like over here, you can see there's right where the legs would be. There's a deep crevice. You can actually go up and hike up onto this thing. It's 753 meters tall, and
wow.
The there was taken out of the Bible called the Book of Enoch. It's one of the apocryphal texts, and in that book they talk about the Titans and this great battle that ensued. Give a measurement for the size of the Titans, which is 3,000 ells, and that equates to roughly 1 mile in height. So this is spot on for that size. And the way I see it, like when thinking of Roger's 900-mile-long dragon in the Sahara, is I have no problem believing that our reality is fractal. So if there's any truth to this Titan thing, then I don't see any reason why there couldn't be one step up. Just like we have giants, and then we have bigger giants. We've got Titans. We probably have bigger Titans as well. So
As above, so below.
Yeah. So basically what I started to do is when I started to contemplate this as an idea, I'm gonna stop sharing. There we go.
So how far do you live from that elephant?
I walk on it all the time. So I'm literally my home is kind of at the foot of it. When I first decided to contemplate this, the first thing I did is what I just did with you guys, which is I started looking around on Google Earth, and that was before it had been edited. And right away, I was taken by the fact that, holy moly, this looks anatomically correct from a bunch of different angles. So when you're talking about pareidolia, it's a totally different thing. That's where you're looking at something like there's loads of people that are sharing pictures of Titans, and you can find all kinds of pages on Instagram of people that are sharing these mountain, it's like the skyline of a mountain, and it looks like a giant lying on its back or
I've seen like the facial profile, like the nose and the lips. Yeah, we've seen those photos.
Yeah, and every time I saw that, I was like, yeah, okay, there was a mountain in my hometown that was called Chief's Peak. It looked like an Indian chief laying on its back. I've flown around the thing in a hang glider. I know it from every angle. It's not it's not an Indian chief, but it was called that.
Yeah, sure.
Who knows what it is? But I wasn't about to just go, oh, it's an elephant because it looks like an elephant. So what I did, I'm a chiropractor. That's what I do for work. And I've studied a lot of anatomy. So I decided, I started thinking about, well, if there's an eye there, you've got a skull, you have an eye socket, then there are specific anatomical correlations that all vertebrates have in common. Like, for example, the eye socket is made of 7 different bones that all meet more or less in the same place. You get major differences in the overall morphology of the shape of the structure of the heads, whether you're looking at a bear or an elephant or a human or a cat or a dog. But they all have similarities as far as how many bones there are and where they meet. And those meeting points are called sutures. And there are these lines that go. And so I had been up at that cave several times, hiked up there with my kids, and I was always pondering, like, this is just nuts. It's so unusual. How did this form geologically? It made no sense to me. And so I decided to get out the anatomy books before going up and examining the cave with these new mud fossil eyes that I had. And so I had a list of criteria of things that I would expect to find if there was any truth to this idea. And so I went up there, and on that first visit, I found 10 different anatomical correlations, and some of them were very, very specific. I can show you in this. I'll show the screen again.
Okay.
Can if you have any questions while I'm looking for it.
Well, I was going to say, are you the first person that has noticed this elephant for what it is, or has anyone else sort of said, "Oh, everyone says it looks like an elephant," but has anyone else sort of seriously looked at the rest of the mountain in the way that you have before, with those eyes?
No. In fact, nobody's done this with. There's a ton of people sharing stuff with Titans. Roger is an armchair researcher. He's just sitting there in a room, and he's not doing any boots on the ground work. And so I figured, if there's going to be any truth to this, I should be able to find some very specific things. And that was when it just started to, take a turn into the Twilight Zone. And it got very bizarre pretty quickly, because if you're looking at something that looks like a face, and then you change your angle and it no longer looks like a face, was it really a face? It doesn't really hold up to scrutiny. Oh wait.
Yeah, sure. Because if you're looking at it from multiple different angles, I guess that you are, like you say, you're cutting out the chance of it being a trick on the eyes, an association the brain is making, a trick of the light. If it looks like it from more than 2 angles, say, right, I've got your screen now. Here we go.
Right. So this is what an elephant's skull looks like, and this is where the eye sits. This is a big muscle, and we have the same thing. It's that muscle that's in the side of our heads, just above the ear, and this is another species of elephant. So they vary dramatically depending on what species you're looking at. So even elephants as a whole can vary quite a bit. And so there's this is where the eye socket would be, and there's this line here for this suture. And that is in the cave exactly where it should be. Actually, this is a better one here. So if you come on. There we go. Yeah, this is the one. Right in here. This line is, let me just slow it down. So this is a human eye, obviously, but the eye has an optic nerve. The back of the eye is very fatty, and it fastens in, and you've got the muscles that move the eye. And then this goes down to the sinuses. And I went spelunking in there with friends, and there's an actual cave that you can go within the cave. You go down this narrow passage, and then it opens up into a big cavern right here. So that was another massive coincidence. So A very, very specific coincidence is that in the see this hole here?
Yeah.
Can you see Google? Okay, so this is a passageway that goes through, and in all vertebrates, like in humans, it's directly below the eye socket. That's a space where the nerves go, and that's what you're seeing. You're seeing through this here. So when you're looking at this thing, it has a very, very biological feel to it. It looks like it grew. It doesn't look like something that formed through some kind of erosion. This is that line I was talking about. And if you looked at the inside of the eye socket and you pointed towards the portion of the eye that's right next to the nose, there's the bone that is your forehead bone and the bone that is the cheekbone. They both meet in that exact point right there. So that was extremely specific. As were these, which they tilt down. Remember I showed you that picture of the eye, and I said the sinuses go down. There are these passageways that are going down at that same angle, and it's down this direction here. So this is, I believe, the remains of the optic nerve. And I discovered when I was up there with some friends later. This is us in the cave. There. Oh. So you can see the channels, and we were back up in here. Actually, no, that's the brain passage. We're back in this area here. So then I started thinking about this section of the mountain, because I figured if there was an eye and it was anatomically correct, this is you can't tell here in this picture because this is on Google Earth because this is blurred, but there's a big outcropping that sticks up here, and
I mean, if you zoom out slightly, Mike, it even looks like there's a nostril further on down.
I'll show you a better picture of it.
When you first showed this, I was like, yeah, that looks a lot like
looks like a nostril further on down there.
And now I'm like, wow.
So they don't have nostrils like we do. They have a massive breathing passage here, and this whole section of the mountain that you're seeing here has all collapsed. They did a massive geological survey of the mountain, and according to mainstream geology, this curvature here is known as a synclinal, and it forms when the massive collapse. Not according to me. So you're thinking here was a nostril?
No, just further down. Yeah, right, that area there.
Yeah. Now, some people have asked me, well, where's the tusk? And if it would have very nicely attached right there. But
to that area,
the thing is, not all elephants have tusks. And the other thing is that it may not ultimately be an elephant. I'm convinced 100% that it's a vertebrate of some sort, but it may be something other than an elephant. It can be pachyderms. There's a lot of different kinds of pachyderms that have similar body types. So I don't know. But you notice here, see this discoloration?
Yep.
This actually everywhere the rock is, it turns reddish, and this is broken away, and you notice it's a quarter moon shape. And I started thinking, man, what if there was an ear also? What if there's some kind of a cave up there? And I started Googling, and I'm like, okay, it looks like a trail here. It wasn't a trail, it was a river bottom. But I hiked up looking for it. But I did that. I got online to figure out which road I need to take. And when I started searching for the road, I found out that the name of this was Barranc del Migdia, and Migdia means midday. So it's the Barranca, which is like canyon of midday, and the reason is that right in here, there's a cave that it's in the cave at midday, and as I was looking for that, I saw that there was a link to Cova del Migdia, and Cova is the Spanish word for cave. Or no, Spanish for cave. Cova is Valenciano, which is the local dialect for cave. So all of a sudden, I found out that there was a cave there that I never knew about, and I tried to hike to it, but I still haven't been up there. It's at 375 meters, and you need ropes and harnesses, and it's also off limits because it was actually excavated by a team of archaeologists, and that was a big shocker for me because I didn't even know there was a cave, and all of a sudden I found out that there was a cave, and this is showing just the structure of a normal ear canal. And so this team of archaeologists went in there, and they found the remains of bodies, they found cave paintings, and they did the most thorough excavation of any cave in Europe at the time. And they went in with 3D mapping and also 3D cameras. And you'll see it here in this. So that's the actual entrance to what I believe is the ear canal.
Wow.
And there they've mapped it out. So I mean, come on, what are the friggin' odds, right? we've got an overall body shape. You know, I like games. I like playing backgammon. So odds is always pretty interesting to me. And what are the odds of so many coincidences?
No, they're very very. It can't be good odds to have that many different coincidences. No way.
Right.
And you're right.
So
It correlates perfectly to the bone, the anatomy structure of a, like you said, a vertebrae of some sort.
Yeah, it may not be an elephant. I've said that for a long time, but because it's called Unveiling a Titan and the thumbnail is an elephant, it'll always be an elephant in my heart, until somebody proves otherwise. But this is interesting here because this guy is crawling around on his knees and he's going around this. You see, it curves around, and if you think of the inner ear, you've got the three semicircular canals, which are a balance organ, and if we go back to that. Right there. Okay, so there's three bones in here. And then there's it's not showing the semicircular canals, but those are the balance organ, and then there's the cochlea, which is shaped like a snail. And if you look here, you'll see. So this is them doing the excavation of the bodies. And this is a fly-through. If you had 3D glasses for movie, you would see that in 3D. So they did far better work than I could have done as far as documenting the internal portions of this cave.
They still didn't work out what it was.
Some things that they knew. And that was interesting because if you look here, this is like deluge. You've got all kinds of creatures falling, and then this looks like a big four-legged creature with horns, if you ask me. That definitely does. And that I mean, tell me that doesn't look like the Great Flood right there. Stuff raining down from the sky. So then I started examining the rest of the mountain because, this was just too far out. And the more I looked, the more I found. And to date, I've been working on this. The channel started it's almost 4 years ago now. And let me find so I started, calculating the lists of correlations. And at this point, it's up to 56.
That's quite a few. That's quite a few
for one mountain. So,
have you got any idea how old it could be?
Well, when it comes to the age of things, that's anyone's guess. It's gonna. I think if the thing is, I can't be right about any of this without major portions of mainstream geology being wrong. So there's going to have to be a whole lot of rewrites, and there's going to have to be new ways of determining what things really are, because I actually steered away from the term mud fossil because I made another discovery, and also the things that I was discovering about the mountain didn't make sense. I mean, if you think about what I said in the beginning with mud covering something up, and then there being this exchange of material, that would mean that the whole mountain would have had to have been covered with mud. That means that the whole ground floor would have had to be, 800 meters higher minimum. And that just didn't make any sense to me. So this is a very long list now of all of the different things that I've found related to the mountain, and this is a very interesting part of it as well. So people who go to my channel, people who go to my channel and are just kind of dipping in, they've discovered it from other channels, and then they watch the latest stuff. But it's pretty rare that they churn through the original 6 videos. Now, some channels like Mud Fossil University, every single video he's repeating himself over and over again. He's talking about the DNA test that he's done. He's talking about the mountain or the dragon in Africa, and he just goes on and on about those things. But it's constant repetition, and I just don't have the time to do that, and I wasn't going to do it. I didn't want to bore people by telling them the same thing over and over. So if you really want to see how thorough I went through this and see the research and the evidence that I presented, you got to go through there's 6 parts now to the Unveiling a Titan series. The first part is just an intro to the idea. Part 2 is just on the eye. Part 3 is, actually, I've got it here. Oh, this is an old bit. Deep look into the eye. There's an ear too. The fourth video is all about the tissues. So I started to look at this because I was a chiropractor. I studied a lot of biology, I studied anatomy, and I studied, I looked in microscopes. So I'm like, well, if I find bone, it should have a certain makeup. And that was when it started to get really, really wild.
Well, that looked like a piece of bone there, yeah, for sure.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. It's so loud.
No, there was a rock on the floor that was scanning through, and I saw it. It instantly looked like a large piece of bone.
Yeah. So when you see, I've documented everything with pictures. Yeah, and if you see, you've got these channels going through. They want us to believe this is just normal erosion, but these rocks all have particular things in common. They have these channels. The channels are fractal, so they break off into smaller and smaller channels, which makes no sense whatsoever from a water erosion perspective. You've got all of this iron ore is caked onto the sides, and also what you find in great quantities are quartz crystal. And you find, so you can see, like here, this is very interesting because this is broken off, right? This is about the size of a car, and you can see that there's reddish earth that's coming out of this channel. Right, so this hasn't been deposited by flood because this is a recent fracture. And so if you think about the makeup of bone, the central portion has what's known as spongeous bone, and then you have the compact bone, which is the hard part of the bone, which has very little in the way of blood vessels, but they're much larger, and then it grows like rings of a tree. And so that's exactly what you're seeing with these gigantic stones here. But also, you've got this micro blood vesseling as well. So if this was all erosion, this should be smooth. You shouldn't have little things sticking up. And you see the quartz here. This is this is blood vessel is made of fat, and I theorize that fat petrifies into quartz. So this is a lot of this is in the part 4 video where I go through and I show the makeup of bone. I show the composition of blood, and I show the different ways in which this correlates exactly to these finds on the mountain. You can see. I mean, look, spongeous bone. This is the cranial bone, and this is on top of the mountain. They call it karst. They say that that's forming by Look, it's the exact same structure. So this is in the skull bone. It's the same as in the long bones, but it's a much finer because it's so small. Compare that to an arm or a leg, you're going to have a much bigger. This is known as trabecular bone. So that kept me busy for quite a while, and then that just caused me to start looking at all of the rocks with new eyes, and that led to a whole other set of discoveries, which had to do with what I've taken to calling petrified organs, because I was so frustrated by the mud fossil community, especially Roger, because he's constantly pointing at rocks and saying, this is 100%, with no doubt whatsoever. He's always 100% certain of everything, and I think that. Let's see. Let me go back to you. There we go.
Yeah.
So
that's absolutely fascinating. So you're saying you've discovered now, rather than whole organisms, what could be potentially just parts of organs?
Yes. Yeah. So that was totally unexpected, because I literally put a request out to the universe. I was like, if there's any truth to this whole mud fossil thing, I want to see something that's just completely undeniable. I mean, besides the mountain, I meant on a smaller scale, because he was always showing rocks, and he's got one that looks like a duck's head. He's got another, he calls them no toes, which it's like the foot but without toes. And he's gotten DNA testing on 3 different samples, and they've come back humanoid. I don't know anything about the laboratory, how reputable they are, but I've looked at the you can download these PDF files from his website, and I'm not a geologist, so the the breakdown of the composition doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me when I'm looking at it, but it appears very authentic. So I figured, okay, why not? But I was still frustrated by how often I was watching videos where people were making just clear claims about things, and all they had to go on was that they thought it looked like something. And I was looking at the same rock going, not really, not to me, So I was walking in the river bottom, and just a few days after putting out that intention, I came across a stone, and I picked it up, and I started looking at it, and it had chambers and openings, and I was utterly blown away, because as soon as I saw it, I realized what I was looking at was a heart. But geology tells us that's more or less impossible. Whenever you find a fossil, it's bone. It's not soft tissue, because soft tissue is being eaten away at by all of these creatures. And but thinking about the mud fossil thing, I was like, well, okay, maybe soft tissue can petrify, because Roger Spurr seemed to have a lot of examples of that, and he seemed to have some good scientific evidence, which is being completely ignored by the mainstream. He's reached out to everybody there is to reach out to, and he's just considered a crazy old coot, So, but what made no sense to me was that I could find a petrified organ separate from the body, and that I've done many videos on that subject. For people who want just like a primer to what I've done, hold on, let me share the screen again. I'll just show some of the thumbnails. I did on that was called Mud Fossils: The Heart of the Matter, because this was when I was still thinking it was a mud fossil, and this is the back side of this. This is the aorta opening. This is the vena cava. The stone is white on the outside, but everywhere that it's worn away, as you'll see in this other picture here, where is it? It's worn away. You can see that it's reddish underneath. So the heart is surrounded in a fatty sac called fascia, and it looks like all of the body is surrounded in fascia. All of our muscles, all of the organs, And the thickest layer of fascia in the body is the heart muscle. It's the most protected. And if you look at hearts, this is the heart with the red blood cells removed, and it looks bone white. And the fatty layering there, or not the layering,
Yep.
but the fat of the heart. So if going back to that other heart the stone that I showed in the beginning, it matches up perfectly. So I started to go through this rock, pulled out the anatomy books, started looking at it. It had the blood vessels were there, the chambers were there. Eventually, I got an endoscopic camera so that I could go into it and start to look at the insides of it. The suture lines was where the different folds of the heart meet. Like you can actually unravel a heart, and where the heart muscle meets, you get these lines. So that one stone now, I've documented 25 anatomical correlations in that one stone.
How big is that stone?
And that stone is about 4 times the size of a human heart. So if you make a fist with your hand, that's roughly the size of your heart. And so imagine 4 times that size. So the second video I did on the subject was this one, mud fossil. Well, if there's any truth to this, it should be repeatable. I should be able to go out and I should be able to find more of these. And so I went out live in the field and found a number of stones that match the same features. And you can see that I've started to identify patterns in the stones. That there's this harp shape that they take on. And many will have the openings for the blood vessels remaining, or sorry, few will have that. But many will have this harp shape. And I can actually show you here on camera. So here's one right here. I don't know if you can make it out, but it's got like a pink fleshy color to it. Can you see the pink? Might not be the right lighting.
Sort of, yeah.
So this has the suture line on the front and the back. That's that line there where the folds of the heart meet. At the top, it's flattened, and you'll have either an opening or a crease or an indentation or just a discoloration, or it'll just be flat. It'll curve in and taper in on the sides, just like that picture I showed with all of the hearts. And that happens because when we die, all the muscles go into rigor mortis, and there's a contraction of the heart muscle. And when the heart contracts, it contracts in a spiral fashion. It's actually a vortex. And that was discovered, interestingly enough, by a Spanish cardiologist. He discovered that the heart was what's known as the myocardial ventricular band. It can literally be dissected and unraveled into one continuous band. We're taught that it's a 4-chamber. The heart has 4 chambers, and it's actually the model that even cardiologists are taught today in school is totally inaccurate as far as the nature of the physical heart. And this Spanish cardiologist proved this beyond a shadow of a doubt. I can show you in a video. Sorry, I'm going on.
No, not at all. We're all absolutely fascinated by what you're bringing to the table. To be honest, I had a rudimentary knowledge about some of this stuff that was coming to the forefront about the idea that the way that fossilization works, we could be completely incorrect about. And you're presenting some pretty irrefutable stuff here. If that is an organism, that mountain, that like you're saying, that can't have been buried in mud. How would that work? So there has to be some other force at play here that is potentially petrifying these biological organisms.
And that's why ultimately I abandoned the mud fossil theory. I think mud fossil theory is still accurate in some cases. but he's using that term as a blanket for every single rock find that you find that's some form of biology originally. He's calling it a mud fossil. I think it's a misnomer. And so I coined the term biogeology, and mud fossil theory would be a part of that. But ultimately, I think a lot of what we're finding, and it's the petrified organs, I've started calling them petrified organs, because I think that what's ultimately happened is there's been some kind of a major cataclysm that's involved electricity, plasma, some major event that, the traces of it are all across the realm. Yeah, we've got the evidence of mud floods, but we've also got these massive Lichtenberg figures, which is this fractal form. Like if you've ever seen that they can put electrodes on two sides of a wooden table and burn this like lightning shape into the table, right? Well, if you look at the Grand Canyon, has the exact same shape. So I think the idea that the Grand Canyon was formed by the Colorado River in this fractal form makes no sense whatsoever through just water.
Also, sorry to butt in there, Mike. The Grand Canyon is highly restricted in a lot of areas of it, so that screams out secrecy.
I saw a video that was put forward that was very convincing. That basically was the idea that the Grand Canyon was actually an ancient excavation, and they showed like if a digger truck was moving an arm and scooping dirt, the kind of shape it would make, and it showed how the Grand Canyon basically followed exactly the same pattern. Is it an ancient quarry?
I mean, I've been there twice.
Yeah,
two separate times. I've been to the Grand Canyon. Flew over in a little biplane.
Is it as impressive as everyone says?
It's fucking magnificent, mate. Yeah, it's definitely worth a. If you're staying in Vegas, then it's literally like you can get I think it's like half an hour, 45 minutes to a local airport and just get a little biplane, cruise around, and then you land there. But you're not allowed in the canyon.
Right.
But there's some helicopter rides which go a little bit into some areas, but the vast majority you're not allowed in. I mean, Godvaj mentioned this in one of his earlier videos, that there was and I've heard this before Godvaj as well, there's a Viking ship in the Grand, sticking out the side of the Grand Canyon in a part of where you're not allowed to go.
Well, in Godvaj's video,
you're not even allowed to fly drones there.
Yeah.
I've heard pyramids as well. Yeah, there's a lot of mystery about the Grand Canyon, but the point is that and this video Daydreamers did originally called Petrified Titans, he touched on this, what he called the plasma apocalypse. There was another channel, a guy who passed away, Chris Austin Lambert, I think, and he was putting out a bunch of information about that as well. And Daydreamers has done loads of videos on this subject. And he's got a lot of very compelling information. So that was when I started to realize that, well, maybe what's happening is that this event, if it's enough to create something like the Grand Canyon or petrify a mile-tall elephant, then what would it do to smaller creatures? And obviously it would just completely annihilate them, right?
Well, I've seen the videos also about the mountains that are apparently mountains, which when you look very carefully, these cave structures actually look like they were windows or rooms, and it's actually like a melted mountain.
And then you've got the other like rock formations which look like petrified tree stumps.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
So
the huge tree stumps, where the tree would have been like miles.
So that would be
high.
actually in correct height comparison to a giant.
If Mike's hypothesis is right, that there were animals that were much bigger than these gigantic animals of prehistoric times and Jurassic times, right? And they're actually a whole level bigger. Then you would have trees that would be hundreds of kilometers high.
And then look at, like you said previously about you've got, your giants, your 10 foot, 12 foot, 15 foot, 20 foot. I mean, look at the Californian giant redwoods. They're not as big as the petrified rock formations that would be in the same comparison. But if you had a different generation
species, they would be like little shrubs compared to those petrified trees.
But to us now, they're massive trees.
The moss.
Yeah. Well, now we've kind of covered all these different threads, and you've got, like, you mentioned the scooper. You can see these places like where the scooper would sit, and it rotates and it creates these, and then we see this happening in rivers where it's just like it's like a switchback. Like, since when does water, flow in that fashion? Why would it erode in that way? So maybe there's some mining. Maybe it's been carved out. There's a guy named Mike Ferreira. He doesn't have a YouTube channel, but he's got a Facebook page called Ancient Miner Earth, I think. And he's an interesting guy. He doesn't buy a single one of my theories for a second. I've reached out to him so many times. We've gone back and forth. And he wants to debate me, but I'm not interested in antagonistic conversations. It's like I have no debate training, and I'm not going to go on because I've already had so many interactions with him. I know nothing that I say is ever going to change his mind. And he'll watch one of my videos, and then without even finishing the video, he's lobbed me like 6 different questions, like, well, what about this and what about this? And I'm just so anyway. I think he's done a lot of great work. And then you mentioned the Avatar trees. Maybe Avatar was a documentary. These the New Earth channel debuted. Sylvie wasn't the one who made the video, but I think she was the one who kind of got it out there to the world. That was a big eye opener for me as well. And then there's another channel called Hangman 1128, and he's got the best boots on the ground footage in the world for the trees, because you've got all the tree stumps, like Devil's Tower, and if you go to Madagascar and you fly around with Google Earth, you can find there's these 8 mile wide, they're all the same diameter stumps that they want us to think are volcanoes. But when you look closer, you can see there's root structures. And there was a video that I saw a few years back. I can't remember the name of the channel, but he showed, it was like a 10-minute video, and he was mapping it out, and like the leaves of this tree were the height of the Empire State Building. And you could see the branch structures, and you could see the remains of the leaves in the ground, and the trunks are there. So that's like more and more coincidence and stacking up.
Have you heard the theory that goes along with the ancient quarries and ancient mining theory, that what we call volcanoes, which are apparently welds from the center of the earth where magma is coming from beneath, that what they could possibly be is actually slag heaps from mining? And for anyone that doesn't know what that is, a slag heap is when you're sort of depositing a load of sort of noxious byproducts of a large industrial technique. Maybe coal mining, whatever. And these slag heaps could burn for, now in our fractal size, our slag heaps burn for years afterwards. So if you could be talking for a slag heap that burns for 10,000 years.
Maybe some volcanoes, because the ones that look like cinder blocks, maybe they're ancient, Titan dung piles, dung heaps. Because our compost piles will spontaneously combust every once in a while, right?
Sure.
So that's not so far-fetched. I've heard other theories that volcanoes are ancient power plants that are deep underground, and that they do their thing once in a while. Mike Ferreira, that's his whole thing, but he's very much like this, in my opinion. A lot of people they come up with their pet theory, and then they snow in on it, and then all of a sudden everything is that. Paul Cook, I don't know if you guys are familiar with his channel. I heard a couple of you guys have an accent that sounds just like his. Have you guys heard of him?
I haven't, no, I'm not familiar.
Man.
Paul Cook.
Paul Cook he's doing the most amazing boots on the ground stuff. He's got all kinds of stuff all over the UK, and he's going into all of these ancient sites in the UK, and the deeper he goes, the more megalithic it gets. And he's got hands down the best footage you'll find.
We actually live in a place here. This is called the Jurassic Coast. So just down the road, we have a whole series of beaches that are very, very famous for fossiling. Now, when I was a kid, you could go down there with a little pickaxe at the bottom of the cliff and just start, chiseling away and get your little, what those old school snails, what those fossil snail things called, the twirly things.
The nautiluses.
Those. You could get those any day of the week. Nowadays, you're not allowed to go down there with your hammer.
He's got compelling evidence that a lot of the coastlines and a lot of the stuff that we think of as naturally occurring geologically is actually remnants of megalithic architecture that got hit like crazy. So that goes back to your, I don't know, Andy or Manic, I'm not sure which of you asked, but that's another one of the threads, is the whole melted building thing. Like, I've got a good few pictures I can show just on that melted. Here we go. Let me share.
Oh, we've just got Paul Cook's link on the
Share
screen,
screen
and
again.
apparently he's local to Sam Carno, Paul Cook. So if you want to check out that channel that Mike just mentioned, the link is actually on the screen right now.
So this is Cappadocia, I think, and you know,
Yeah.
there's so many people who are saying, you know, this is melt, you know, and that you know, the official story is that with Bronze Age tools that they carved in, but like they're going to climb way up high and then they're going to carve out a big square, you know, window. It's more likely that, you know, if they did carve anything out, that it was a softer material because it was the remains of, you know, some hole that was in the structure. That's another look at it. And, you know, I mean, come on. They carve these with Bronze Age tools. John Luddy's been showing just tons of great stuff. You know, to me, this looks a lot more like a building that got hit, you know, but I could be wrong.
Mm. Yeah, that picture you just showed there, that really looks like the slag heap, sort of burning cinder pile.
Yeah.
Like the remnants
Totally.
from a cataclysm.
Well, like if you scooped a load of
I mean, look at this. Look at that.
Oh yeah,
that's supposed to be carved by primitive tools.
I think that's in southern India.
Come on, guys.
And that's one solid piece.
Yeah.
You know, there's another great channel called Wise Up. He's been around for a long time, and he's talking about. He believes that a lot of the megalithic architecture that we see was actually originally built out of wood, and then when the cataclysm hit, if you combine volcanic ash with salt water, you're going to get petrification of wood.
Right. Okay.
You know, so he's finding all these old, you know, like all over the UK are these megalithic, you know, what do they call them, the barrows and whatnot, and you know, a lot of those are probably the remains of boats that were you know, basically absorbed this ash and salt water and then turned to stone. So I mean, it just goes on and on. But the melted buildings crew, once again, like everything is a melted building to them, and and I think it's just, you know,
I think there's a lot of that in the truth content creators game. It's like with the whole mud flood Tartaria thing. Anyone wants to look into hidden history, they have to slap the Tartaria label on it. Anyone wants to talk about a reset. Oh, that's Tartarian. This is pre-neoclassical Tartarian. It's like none of us really know what's what. We're all sharing ideas at the end of the day, and I think you're absolutely right. Some people are a little bit too ready to die on their particular hill. Which doesn't always help.
You're still seeing my screen, right?
Yes, we're showing it.
So if people want just like if they don't have a lot of time to see the whole series and they just want a primer video, this is like 25 minutes, and it's kind of covering the discoveries that I made about the Heartstones and about the mountain, and then there's a part called the how and why. And in that video, I lay out my best guess at how this came about, and I've taken to calling it I've taken it boiled egg theory, and the reason is that I talked about the fascia and this sac that the hearts are surrounded in. Well, the heart itself is contained in a chamber that, you know, our chest cavity. So let me just find one picture. This is a shot, but it illustrates it very well. So you have this outer portion of this cavity is also very thick and fatty. And inside are the lungs and fluid, and then you have the heart that's basically there floating in this fluid. So my theory is that what happened is, as the cataclysm hit with, you know, great force, whether it was there's something known as pyroclastic flows that they talk about in geology. This is when the volcanoes erupt. They can erupt with temperatures of up to 1,500 degrees centigrade, and that can be ejected at up to the speed of sound. So imagine 1,500 degrees traveling at the speed of sound. That could just totally hit and annihilate something. And so I think what happened is the outer portions of the body were just annihilated, But meanwhile, the heart is inside fluid, which is going to be boiling at a very high temperature while the outer portions are being destroyed. And then the heart itself, which is in this sac, is going to boil like an egg. You know, you take an egg, you've got the shell and it's fluid, right? And then you put it in boiling water for 5 or 6 minutes, and what does it do? All the proteins in the egg denature, and then they harden. And the longer you cook that egg, the harder it gets. And I had a guy who wrote me a very interesting letter, because he was totally on board after seeing my videos, because he had this dog that he absolutely loved that passed away. Sorry, let me get this picture off of the screen here. Actually, wait, I'll just play on talking. So this dog passed away, and under the dog, he decided to build a pipe, and he got this particular kind of wood. I can't remember which kind of wood, but it's the hottest burning wood that you can find. And this thing was like 10 feet long, 6 feet tall. It burned for 2 days straight. And he said that when all was said and done, and he went to examine the remains, every single thing, every part of the dog had been turned to ash, except for the heart. The heart was there, and it remained, and it was very hard and tough. And that's just from burning wood. Now, increase that by tenfold. What's it going to do? What's it going to turn into?
So this explains why you have come across, or you've potentially come across, so many alleged rocks which are actually this type of petrified fossilized heart. Because, you know, on the first view of that, we say, well, why are there loads of hearts lying around? Where are the other organs? Where are the other body parts? But you've explained that perfectly. If that is,
I didn't have an explanation for it initially. This rock got me on the subject in the first place, and I wasn't looking to like come up with a wacky theory. I thought it was a mud fossil, and in fact, I sent a video of me rotating this rock to Roger from Mud Fossils University before I ever made a video about it, because I thought he's going to love this, because my prayer was answered. You know, I wanted to find something that was undeniable, and this thing had so many anatomical features. This portion here is known as the isthmus. Between the pulmonary arteries, you've got the two arteries, and let me find there's a picture here I can show you. That's a better view of it. So this is looking in. There's a chamber side. These two bumps are the remains of the muscles that open the valves. You can see that everywhere that the white is missing, it's like blood red. And somebody who saw this picture, he's like, there's no way that could be some kind of an erosion that's formed from sedimentary layering. Because the official mainstream geological explanation for how these have come about is that it's sedimentary layers that have just been laid down over millions of years, and then parts of those rocks have broken off, and then they've rolled around in river bottoms, and they've undergone erosion, and that's why they have this shape. But when you start having all of these anatomical correlations piling up, you can see here this fat that goes across here. That is right there. Yeah. This opening is right where the coronary artery sits, and then right above this fat is an indentation that goes alongside the fat. That's what's known as the coronary sulcus, which is the line that I show this in the Mud Fossils, The Heart of the Matter video, part 1. I go in with endoscopic cameras. I have all the anatomy there, so you don't just have to take my word for it. You can look at the pictures as I'm saying, this looks like a this, then you can see that it's in, it's there and it's in the right place. So that one rock has 25 correlations to it. And because I started looking at the rocks differently, and you can see this one here has the isthmus as well, right? And this one too. And wow. Here, the bottom portion, these are all curved on the bottom, but this one is not. It's fractured, and it exposes the ventricle when you see it. I put it here in a second, down below. There.
So
the ventricle is
I really am.
Yeah, but here's the interesting thing: they're in all sizes, right? They're from millimeters up to feet. So that's consistent with, if it was just a broken piece of a larger structure, I can see that I can see the rock forming in a particular way based on the anatomical matrix of the rock. Like it cleaves in a particular way, and then it erodes in a particular way, right? But this same pattern is happening across scale. And it's got very, very specific features like the sulcuses I talked about before, and this curved underside because of that spiraling contraction of the heart. I'll show you here in another video, Mud Fossils, the Heart of the Matter, Part 1. Where is it?
So for the viewers, go out and find some petrified heart rocks and see what
I'm
you
thinking
think.
back to my childhood, and I swear, like when we used to find rocks on the beach and washed up on the sea, we always used to say, "Doesn't this one look like it could have been this? Doesn't this one look that looks like a sinew of a muscle? This one looks like this."
Yeah.
I've had these conversations because I grew up around the beach, and playing with the rocks and everything.
Yeah. So, let's see here. Just talking about the same things in the video. And then it shows the contraction of the heart.
So you've always got it's always got the 3 holes as well.
There's the pericardium. That's the fatty. Pretty rare to find them with the chambers and the blood vessels intact, and I think that's because the body's under compression at the time, and so a lot of them are flattened. So you get all the same features, but it's more of a flattened shape. Where is the video here? So there's at the time I made this video, there were only 15. But when I got the endoscopic camera and I got in there, I found a number of other features as well. So that's up to closer to 25 now. So this is what I want to show here.
Yeah, the correlation is pretty undeniable, really.
So there's that spiral contraction there. And when it does, the bottom part flattens or slightly curves inward. And you'll actually see in a number of these rocks, if you look at them from the bottom up, you'll see that it's twisted like a propeller because of that spiral contraction. I mean, how specific is that? And then I wanted to show you, I talked about the heart being a band, the myocardio-ventricular band that was discovered by, I call this Helical Hearts, Petrified Organs, and Synchronicities. This is one of my best videos. And I talk about the life of this cardiologist, that's him there, and his discoveries, because they were monumental, and we should all be taught them in school, but we're not. And he discovered that if you boil the heart and you gently remove the outer portion, then you can literally dissect it with the fingers, which is what he's doing here. And you can pull the part. This is a total aha moment. When most people see this for the first time, they're just absolutely blown away. He only needs to do one cut with the knife right there where it meets the aorta. And then look at that.
Unraveled someone's heart.
Wow.
You just unravel. And see these lines? These are the suture lines. I find these in so many rocks. That rock that I held up earlier, it's got them in just the right place. I'll show it again in a second. But
This is absolutely fascinating.
yeah, this is one of the most amazing. We should all be taught this. And then he made a further discovery, not just the band. So this ties into the works of Victor Schauberger, which I talk about in this video. And he was basically the Tesla of water. And so he understood more about water flow than anybody before him. And so what Gauss discovered, because he discovered this band, he discovered that the heart is also functioning in action. So basically, this pattern is repeated all throughout nature. This guy copied like a tornado and 3D printed it and learned with this small little fan. It's like a fan blade that spins. He can keep millions of gallons of water moving so that they don't stagnate on virtually no energy at all. It's all based on the work of Victor Schauberger. But anyway, so Guas was theorizing what is actually happening with the heart. It's totally different than we thought as far as its anatomy. And it wasn't until they discovered that it's actually contracting. Oh, it's sped up here. Actually contracting in a spiral fashion. And this is I think they call it positronic emission. And you can see the spiral. So we literally have a perpetual motion machine inside of us. It's like, the arc reactor or whatever it's called that Iron Man has.
Yeah.
It's truth in plain sight.
It's a torus field.
Yeah, it's a torus field. It's exactly what it is. So in this video I show they come up when you wet them. It really sees a lot more detail. And there's the sulcus line. So I go through a bunch of hearts there, or stones that I believe are hearts.
No,
it's truly monumental because the idea, the reason he made this discovery was because he understood that with the high viscosity of blood, there's 60,000 miles of blood vessels in the body, and it's hard to believe until you see things like that.
Yeah, this is amazing, Mike. I'm conscious that we've run over our allotted time with you a little bit. We were supposed to have 9 to 10:30. We could probably go on for hours and hours because you clearly got a lot more information. Can you just let everyone know how to get hold of the rest of your work? Is it just all on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, it's Stellium7, just like my name on the screen there, Yeah, start with the Unveiling a Titan series and then check out the Heartstones. Hearts come in all different shapes and sizes. So I focused on the harp-shaped stones because they're the most distinct, they're the easiest to spot, and they're more likely to have these different anatomical features. And but they can be a blob, they can be round. If you see a giraffe's heart, it's long and narrow. If you see an elephant's heart, it's really big. So they could literally look like just about anything, but these are so specific that they're the most specific are actually the easiest to spot, which is the cool thing.
Yeah, I think we're all going to be looking out for those signs and the anomalies that you've just pointed out. But next time we're looking at rocks for sure, because you've brought a lot together there.
That was basically a documentary.
Yeah, it was a whole documentary. No, that was brilliant. We're a bit strapped for time. I'd love to have you on for longer, but Stellium7, thank you very much for joining us. And there's a lot to think about there.
Definitely, my pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
No, it's been awesome. Thank you very much for joining us, bro.
Mike.
Rise above.
Rise above.